Welcome to Miles to Zen, a podcast that celebrates life's delightful twists and turns, no matter where you are on your journey. I'm your host, Shannon Miles Halliday, a follower of curiosity, a mom, a wife, a former corporate executive, and a creator. And this is my very first podcast episode. So, what motivated me to do this podcast, anyways? Well, when I find something that can be helpful to someone else, I want to share. If I find something that will light someone up or can bring them joy in any way, I want to share. If anything on my journey can help someone, lift them up, spark a creative idea, help build a community, or just provide one connection for someone, I want to do it. I have always seen in my career that I am a bridge between the public and new technology, between corporate and new ideas. And this is how I would like to continue. I love that this podcast can be a bridge between us and a new idea, a new perspective, a moment of joy, a moment of peace. And you get it. I am endlessly curious, probably was a cat in a past life, and we all know how that ended. Kidding. I'm a highly creative person. However, if you asked me that even 5 years ago, I would have seriously questioned this, but much, much more on this later. And one of my all-time superpowers is connecting in the traditional sense of networking. However, I light up like a Christmas tree when I can make a meaningful connection with someone, be it that I've known for 10 seconds or 10 years. This podcast will be jam-packed with interviews with impactful people, joyful people who plain old are coming from a different perspective to broaden your mind and your possibilities. And all of them, I think, can help you to live the life you want to today. Maybe you need help trusting yourself and making decisions. We will talk about this a lot. Maybe you'd like to have some interesting conversations about career changes and journeys that are inspiring and super helpful. I guarantee all the people we have lined up, and some I have already recorded our sessions, are all infinitely interesting in their journeys and the knowledge, wisdom, and perspectives they bring. You'll have tools to approach your daily life, whether that is dealing with a career change, a family change, a loss, a breakdown, or a breakthrough, and ultimately journeying towards a life that is aligned with who you truly are. One that may feel out of the comfort zone, but the best things are usually on the other side of your comfort zone. This is what I'm telling myself as I record this. So, a little bit about me. I have recently left a successful career in clean tech. It may be forever, it may be for now. I am also an artist, a writer, a photographer. I have learned a thing or three from navigating these years through life's journey. I had a pretty adventurous start to my career, and then came a marriage, and after a long road, a baby carriage, followed by some health bumps, some highs, some lows, and eventually what Brene Brown calls a breakdown, spiritual awakening in 2018. And life, in many ways, became even richer, monetarily as well, funnily enough. And a lot of exponential learnings have happened since then, which we can save for some separate episodes. Rewinding quickly to the beginning, I grew up on a hobby farm about an hour outside of Vancouver. It's where I developed my deep, deep love of animals and nature. It's where my creativity blossomed, where my imagination ran wild, and where I learned the not so subtle art of failure on a daily basis. I had an older brother, after all, and as any younger child knows, for the most part, you become pretty darn good at failing because it's a normal part of your daily existence. You can never keep up with your older sibling or do things as well as your older sibling in most cases. And the gift being that you're not scared to try something new because failing is so familiar. So thank you, Sarah Blakely of Spanx, for making the failing conversation entirely acceptable. I also learned how to work. If you want something done, ask a farm kid. Seriously, even hobby farm kids had to work their butts off. My household, although loving and supportive, had some clear lines about what was women's work and what was men's work, except for if help was needed outside on the farm, which it usually was, and except if my brother had a friend stay over. Because every morning there was usually a ton of chores, and on weekends this was no exception. But when my brother had a friend over, instead of the usual, come on, kids, get up, work to be done, it was, come on, boys, get up, work to be done. And I would feel momentary discomfort and then snuggle back into my bed, knowing my dad had the help he needed. Classic younger sister move. This probably greatly impacted my brother's friend circle. Not too many repeat sleepovers there. Both my parents had day jobs. My dad was an aircraft engineer and my mom a nurse, and my dad's dream was a farm. So this meant at the height of things, we had one dog, 13 cats, 39 cows, two horses, five chickens, and every one of the neighbors' animals that escaped their fences at our farm. And funnily enough, if you asked my dad now, and he's got some memory challenges, but if you asked him what he did for his career, he would say that he was a farmer. And growing up, there was also my mom's family, a huge family, a beautiful family, but a fair amount of drama, births, deaths, divorces, arrests, prison, alcohol, gambling, you name it. My mom somehow counseled her family through all of it. My mom was a professional at peacekeeping and made anyone she talked to feel like the most important person in the room. I have 27 first cousins, huge. And this meant also not a whole lot of time for us kids. I'm not sure how they did it looking back on it, because now I see that whatever extra time they did have was entirely gifted to us. And my dad, although passionate, didn't have the time or the knowledge, I don't think, to keep a farm of our size running smoothly. He was pretty good at fixing things, but fences were often broken, cows escaping, horses escaping, and it used to get pretty cold here, and pipes would freeze, power would go out, and this regularly meant without the power, we had no well, so that meant no water and only a wood stove for heat and cooking. It was like Little House on the Prairie sometimes. And often when this would happen, my dad was away on a business trip. Our house was built in 1905 as well, and I don't remember great insulation. There was also the extreme mortification, character building, of going to a city school with a note that said, sorry, she's late again. The cows got out again. And of course, this was new to most teachers. So they would say this out loud in front of the whole class. Talk about the humiliation of it all. One of my skills, honed from childhood, surrounded by large animals, was a gift self-bestowed amongst many people pleasers as well, is the ability to read the temperature of the room. Not the actual temperature, but a quick scan as soon as you walk into every situation, like my elementary school class with the late note. A quick scan, and I knew who was getting along, who was happy, who wasn't. Same thing in the farmyard. Does Isabel or Dinah, the cow, are they ready to charge, or do they have indigestion? Yes, I can read the minds of cows. And frankly, every kid who survived childhood on a farm has this gift as well, or they wouldn't have survived, especially if they had any fencing problems. After doing a fair amount of self work, I now get to turn this skill on and off as I please, and I can be truly present. Maybe more on childhood stories in later episodes. I had wanted to be many things as a kid: a vet, a pilot, probably because it sounded so courageous, an actor, a singer. Everyone can breathe a huge sigh of relief that I didn't go for that one. The reality was that I had no idea. But I was told, oh, Shannon should do something with people, because I did and do genuinely like most people. Well, that's my starting point, at least. Later in high school, a friend told me she wanted to be a trade commissioner or an ambassador. It all sounded so glamorous, and I'd longed for an adventure and thought, sign me up. I'll do that. That sounds fun. I did travel a lot as a kid because my dad worked for an airline. Lord knows how my parents swung the travel with the farm. So I went to school to study international relations. Fast forward to the end of university, where I decided to go backpacking to Europe for 2 months. I stayed 7 years. I eventually ended up stopping in Paris. And then after a year, moved to Geneva for an internship with the UN Center for Human Rights. I joined a drinking group with a running problem called the Hash House Harriers, fell in love with a man who was all wrong, did an MBA to help me figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up, lived at the corner of Rue d'Enfer and Rue Purgatoire, which is the corner of hell and purgatory, which I thought was pretty hilarious. Uh, I made some epic friends, climbed and biked a lot of mountains, realized I didn't want to work in the Foreign Service after all, traveled a lot, eventually moved home for 6 months to give it a try. I traveled some more, had a crazy cool international job that allowed me to travel all over the place, bought a killer bachelorette pad, and 4 days later met my beautiful husband to be. My parents love him and loved him from the beginning. Every time I would introduce a guy to my dad, he would say, "Next." My husband calls himself my boat anchor and insists the reason why my parents liked him was because he kept me from skipping the country. I became a stepmom to a teenager. And even if you marry a Zen man, this is not the easiest journey in the world. Eventually, I had a baby boy. I had many more years of clean tech work trying to make the planet healthier, which is why I went into the field ages ago. And here we are today. Recently, having left my former company that I'd helped grow from 20 people to 150, ended up in situations that I never thought I'd be in, such as being on the governing body of the Global Energy Show and giving presentations with heavy hitters in the energy sector. Me, a little tree hugger from the West Coast. I had many moments along my career journey where I felt, how did I end up here? What the heck am I doing on this stage or in this room, at this lab, at this project site? And moments that felt totally aligned when I could share information with people to help them on their journeys, give a spotlight to some fabulous women, share some insights that people hadn't considered before. An exercise I did a little while ago was I had to write the story about my leadership journey. And I'll go into this in another episode as well. But my theme was that it was a story of magic. And a spoiler alert for that future podcast episode is that magic is an inside job. I've had many moments of magic in my career and in my life, and I am so darn excited about this next part of the journey, which has already been pretty magical. My ultimate goal for this podcast is to help you find your sparkle, your particular brand of magic. It's not far away, I guarantee you. You are not alone on your journey, and you have more available to you than you think. If I could combine the personalities and teachings from some of my favorite authors and podcasters like Mel Robbins, Jamie Kern-Lima, Wayne Dyer, Kathy Heller, a touch of Brene Brown, a dash of Joe Dispenza, a sprinkle of the genius of Gay Hendricks, this is what I aspire to have come through on this podcast and bring to our listeners. Coming up are more of my stories, as well as interviews with a beautiful woman who recently turned 100, is happy and healthy, a rapid transformation therapist and one of the bravest people I know, a kick-butt entrepreneur who's making AI more inclusive, more understandable, and an accessible place, a woman who quit her corporate career to bring people on heartfelt adventures through the Himalayas and many other places, the Chinese medicine doctor who is responsible for my fertility success and who I still work with today. And he works with patients doing mind-body work, an enlightening conversation with the death doula, a perspective-shifting conversation with the medium, and much more. We all have the ability to live epically amazing lives, and I can't wait to go on this journey with you. Thank you for listening. If you got something out of this podcast, be sure to follow or subscribe. Miles to Zen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you are notified about new episodes. And please take the time to leave a review, especially if you listen on Apple Podcasts. This will help more people access these inspiring and perspective shifting stories from our guests. And if you really got something out of it, take a screenshot of this episode on your phone, share it on social media, and tag me at Miles to Zen on Instagram, and I'll be sure to reshare your post. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.